The Vikings signed 19 undrafted free agents after the draft, but can any of these dudes make the team? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. I appreciate you all so very much. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show, but it might not even be a draft pick because we're doing the undrafted free agents today. The Vikings signed an absolute ton of undrafted free agents. So I want to get through all of them. We're not doing that in one show. That ain't happening. So I've taken some of the small school guys and I've set them aside. We're going to have our small school guy, Kevin Fielder, come in and talk to us about him. He also covered Kansas State. So Keenan Garber, corner out of Kansas State, and does a lot of special team stuff. So we'll talk to him about the punter the Vikings got, Oscar Chapman, who is the Auburn punter. One of 4 undrafted free agents from Auburn the Vikings signed. Weird quirk, but I guess it's the kind of thing you get when you sign 20 dudes. So before I get into the guys real quick, why so many undrafted free agents? What's the deal? Well, it's a numbers game, right? The Vikings lost a ton of players, didn't replace them all, hence all the comp pick stuff the Vikings are getting, which by the way is about to lock in. So that gets to not be part of the calculus again by like later this week. And they only acquired 6 players this weekend, 5 draft picks and Sam Howell. So they have a lot of roster to fill out, and that's what undrafted rookies are for, is to fill out the roster, get up to 90, and that's going to be where we're at. I don't know exactly what number we're at, but usually around this time of year, right after the draft, you're at like 88, maybe even at 90 total. And we spend the next couple of months at mostly the full roster with maybe a little shuffling here and there as Asante Samuel types come in or as a trade gets made or something like that. So let's start with the quarterback. And I'm going to be honest, most of you, if you're Gophers fans, because you're also Vikings fans, probably know more about Max Brosmer than I do. But for those of you who are completely unfamiliar, Max Brosmer, he was a quarterback from Minnesota. He's a transfer to Minnesota, one of these like longer career, older quarterbacks that can come in and probably be QB4. But, hey, every opportunity in the world to go beat Brett Rippon and or Sam Howell, go take a job if you got it, kid. Like that's the kind of thing. So I don't need to tell you a ton about him, but the MO of this guy is this like hyper conservative, is very like Sean Mannion reincarnated kind of player where, there's never going to be any explosiveness. He never completed a pass over 50 yards last year. But he'll get the thing to the slant on time. He'll throw choice. He'll throw stick. Like he'll throw the dumb ones that, and he'll do that properly. So you have this sort of this floor to it, but like basically no ceiling at all to speak of. Hey, that works in college where you can kind of not screw up your way to 8-5 in an RPO offense because it's PJ Fleck. But in the NFL, that's not enough to get you drafted. So that's one, like two, the main questions here are 1, what are the paths to the roster for all these guys? And 2, why didn't they get drafted? What's so great about them? If they didn't get drafted, like what's the reason and how much does that concern us, right? So for Max Brosmer, there's just nothing exciting. Everything that made Shadur Sanders fall, turn it up to 11, you get Max Brosmer. So that's going to be a pretty tall order for him, I think, to beat out somebody like Sam Howell, who's a much more volatile quarterback, but gives you that, hey, maybe we just get the right side of variance and we accidentally win one with our backup quarterback. That's the kind of thing you want there, versus the like, don't screw up, taken up to a bajillion. I kind of doubt that we're going to even see a lot of Max Brosmer in the preseason. I'm going to guess he's QB4 and an easy cut down day candidate. Next up, Robert Lewis. Here's our first Auburn Tiger. 5'11", 185, fairly productive wideout, 4.45. Like every stat is like just barely okay. Or like every measurable is like barely okay. But he kind of plays like the worst version of all those numbers. He gets bodied by contact. And as much as he was like a productive guy for Auburn, it kind of feels like it's like, what if Jordan Addison didn't have the it factor? And hey, look though, a productive P4 wideout, like sure, man. And if you want to talk like path to the roster, right? We have, Jefferson, Addison, Naylor, the new guy, Ty Felton. And then it's like, what, Rondale Moore? Is he even going to play? Like he's doesn't look like he's even going to be like ready for camp. That knee injury was so bad. So there's absolutely like a way to for him to sort of shoulder his way into the bottom of the roster if he can get productive in the preseason and if he can be productive on special teams. That's going to be what it takes for all of these guys. They're going to have to do special teams with the exception of the like offensive linemen who I guess they'll play special teams on the field goal units and stuff, but is a little bit more about their stuff from scrimmage, or like Max Brosmer, right? The other wide receiver that I'm going to talk about today, there's Dante Fleming. He's Tulane. We'll save him for when we get Kevin on. But Silas Bolden is the other one. He's a wide receiver from Texas. He's literally smaller than me. He's 5'8", 162. And that's me if I were in like good shape. I probably am 15 to 20 pounds heavier than is healthy. But even if I lost that weight, I would still be. This guy's smaller than Ben Solak. Like, this is podcaster's podcaster. And didn't test very well. Like, there are small receivers that size in the league, like Tutu Atwell and Tank Dell. He's about that size. Obviously, there's durability concerns with both of those guys. You would have the same thing with Silas Bolden here. He's got a couple of cool highlights as like a returner, and that's pretty much going to be his path to the roster. He has to go get the return game, go get the special teams role, and he might have to be fighting somebody like Ty Felton specifically for that. But the Vikings will have a returner job that's like completely wide open. So, hey, look, if Silas Bolden takes one to the house in the preseason, that's his like path to the roster. But he also has to just like physically survive when he's built like a character from Silicon Valley. Like, that's tough. There are a couple tight ends that the Vikings got. One is Ben Urasek. This is actually a guy I think maybe has the best path to the roster. The problem is the Vikings also drafted a tight end, and that guy's going to kind of get first right of refusal just based off the politics of roster building and how it kind of tends to go down. But Ben Urasek is like a blocker, good enough blocker to make a team. At least that's the way that Dane Brugler put it. Not exactly an inspiring athlete. He played at Stanford for 4 years, then transferred to Georgia as a grad transfer. But his claim to fame is kind of as a dirty work, a blocker guy, like this like humble ho-hum dude. And if that can get to be tight end 3, or if he can be good enough to convince the Vikings to keep a 4th, you have Hawkinson, Oliver, Bartholomew, Urasek. That would be the room. But you'd have to be really good in the preseason. But I do think the opportunity is there for him to show out. Whereas, I mean, look, with some guys, Max Brosmer can have the best preseason ever, but it's going to be like a really hard uphill battle just to like earn the opportunity to even do that. I think Ben Urasek could absolutely block his way onto the roster if that's the way you want to do this. But like everybody else, it's going to also take contribution on special teams. And then there's Bryson Nesbitt, who is the total opposite package. He's a route runner without the like play strength to block, like very much a move tight end kind of guy, but also 4'8", 40. So, like, if your job is only receiving, you got to be faster than that if you're going to be a move tight end. However, he does reunite with Sam Howell. They played together on the 2021 North Carolina Tar Heels. I got a bunch of guys in the trenches coming up next, as well as some guys in the back 7 of the defense. And we'll continue to mention guys like Trey Stewart, running back out of Jacksonville State. We will talk about when we have Kevin on the horn. But next up, we'll go to the trenches. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. Look, if you were lucky enough to get to either one of those Wolves games, or if you just watched on TV, you know that atmosphere is absolutely electric, and you can get in on the fun with Gametime. It makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high for something like the playoffs, if the series does get back to the Target Center, or if you're like me and you live in LA and you want to go, and I might be checking this out, prices on the app go down as tip-off gets closer. People want to get rid of their tickets. They start to put them on the market really cheap, and Gametime helps you navigate that. You can save up to 60% off of buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and etc. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Hey, check out patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. At some point, I will finish my Donovan Jackson video. It'll be up, I promise, eventually. It's like the one thing I want to get done this week. Otherwise, my brain is still very tired from all of the draft activities. But we press on nonetheless. Let's talk about some O-linemen. Vikings got 3 O-linemen from free agency. The first one is Joe Huber. He's an interior guy. Very fascinating story. I'm going to enjoy the Everyman series on him, but I'll give you the broad strokes real quick. He was a no-star recruit, known more as a wrestler in high school, walks on at Cincinnati, later transfers to Wisconsin. And the reason that he's like a total nobody is that he didn't actually play O-line until his last year of high school. So like giga raw, super, super raw prospect. Didn't quite have the tested athleticism to get anybody to spend a draft pick on that kind of like rawness, but like just still inexperienced at the position and the vig, like, and all the little nuances of it. But he didn't end up playing a couple years at Wisconsin. The maybe more well-known O-line and the more highly regarded O-line in the class is Logan Brown. He's from Kansas, but he also spent a bunch of time at Wisconsin. But he left just before Joe Huber got there, chips in the night. 6-year college player. Now, he didn't play a lot his first year. Then COVID happened his second year. Didn't play a lot his third year. He didn't actually play till his senior year. And then in that season, in the middle of that year, he gets kicked off the team, or dismissed, whatever the right word is. He gets kicked off the team because he hit one of his teammates, striking a player. And Jim Leonard was like, "We've dismissed you. You're off the team." And he transferred to Kansas and played out the rest of his eligibility there. So I don't know what the deal was with that. And obviously, you'll never find out. The college will keep most of the details of that kind of thing private, but they gave us the reported detail as he was striking a player. So I don't, whatever's going on with that. He was not consistent enough to get drafted despite being a good athlete. And I'm sure that the whole incident at Wisconsin didn't help his case either. But that's an interesting package to watch as somebody like pushing like a Walter Rouse for the fourth tackle job, that kind of thing. And then there's Zeke Correll, another North Carolina guy. It's NC State this time. A small NC State center who anchors okay for his size. They snuck another one right past us all. But the difference is Bradbury had this like polished pro readiness coming out where he had the technique all down and it was just the bargain was, will you be able to overcome his size? But he was always like, he didn't come out like raw as Zeke Correll's coming out with all that same stuff, but also like kind of project-y. But actually kind of has a path to the roster as the backup center if he can beat out Michael Juergens, who was a disaster in the preseason last time, but the team seems pretty high on him. So there might have been some growth behind the scenes that we're not privy to. We'll have to see, but that might be a real competition. Or if Michael Juergens did move to the guard spot to back up / compete with Blake Brandel before they got Donovan Jackson, whatever they do there on the interior, there is still kind of a question mark of who the backup center will be, and Zeke Correll has every chance to go earn it. A couple of edge rushers as well. There's Tyler Batty, who is a 3-4 outside linebacker, edge type, Dallas Turner type from BYU. 26 years old, thanks to the Mormons. That's just a BYU thing. You're always going to get them old because they spend 2 years on their mission and they have to. But would be 24 without that, so like also played out a ton of eligibility. He is like an all motor guy, total effort player, not like a polished pass rusher kind of guy, but he just sort of fights, and sometimes he'll get production just by try harding. And then there's Chaz Chambliss, who's my favorite name in the class, also an edge. He's a Georgia guy who played with Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. And he is very much like a speedy edge, like another one kind of built in that same Dallas Turner mold. You're looking for these are the guys that are going to like push Gabe Murphy kind of. But the vibe I get from reading like scouting reports is like an around not through kind of guy that probably doesn't have enough polish to get in from scrimmage. And with both Batty and Chambliss, their path to the roster is going to be via special teams. There's an interior D lineman, Alex Williams from Middle Tennessee, and I got Kevin on that one too, so we'll circle back to that. Again, looking at like projected 53-man roster stuff is a good way to figure out like which of these players has a path to the roster. And at this edge rusher, call it outside linebacker, whatever position, there is absolutely some juice there. Like there's some opportunity, right? If you pencil in your makes, right? Grenard, Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, and I don't know what you want to call Tyrion Ingram Dawkins, but call him one or not, and say that there's one more spot, right? You've got Gabe Murphy and then Ambry Thomas and two of these undrafted rookies, right? Gabe Murphy is by no means guaranteed a roster spot. And some people think he's going to like show up and like be this like part of the Vikings. I don't think so at all. I don't think that he is guaranteed anything. He was hurt for a bunch of last year. He was marginally useful and has to earn his keep. Again, just like any undrafted free agent, no matter how excited you are about them in the preseason, when they make the team, they have to make the team again. I remember, I think it was Deshaun Bauer, I think, that like kind of surprise made the team and everybody sort of had him penciled in as like a project with a bright future for the Vikings. And then one day he just got cut, just didn't make it. And that was that. And that's how they can go with these guys when some young upstart, or some 26-year-old upstart, I guess, comes in and takes the job. So that's the kind of like calculus we need to do. Next up, we will go over some of the guys in the back seven. We got a couple linebackers, some defensive backs that fill this stuff out. This episode is brought to you by the 2025 Nissan Armada. Every week, we've highlighted a draft prospect that embodies the vibe of the Nissan Armada, the heavy-duty road grader kind of thing. Well, it's pretty easy to pick one from the Vikings draft class. It's, of course, Donovan Jackson. Put a hand on the shoulder, put a hand on the hip, move stuff out of the way, clear that road with capability and confidence. Donovan Jackson is here, and he has cleared the road with confidence to a starting role, just like you can clear the road in an all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada Rogue or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Moving on here with the Locked On Vikings podcast, a few more undrafted guys to worry about. There are two other players that I'm going to table for now. There's Keenan Garber, and then also Oscar Chapman, who is the punter from Auburn. So we're going to have a punting competition. He's also an international pathway guy, but he punted at Auburn. And so Kevin's a bit of a special teams guy too. So even though he is from Auburn, I told Kevin, hey, let me know what you think of the punter too. And we'll see what he circles back around with. We'll get to that sometime this week. By the way, I should mention, the draft is over. This remains a daily podcast. There might be some times in like May or June where we go down to like 3 a week or something like that, depending on if I'm out of town or not. But that's pretty much the only time is if I'm not like physically here. Otherwise, this is going to be a daily show, and we're going to do a lot of the Everyman series, which is a series where we go through every newcomer to the Minnesota Vikings, which means every player mentioned in this episode, the draft picks, the free agents, the Sam Howells, everybody. That is new, and go over their backstory, how they came to the NFL, how they got into football in the first place, and any other tidbits you might need or want to know about them. So every dayers, keep hanging out. We got a lot to talk about and a lot to do this summer. I actually am looking at like how am I going to fit everything I'm going to talk about in June and July rather than looking for topics, which I take a lot of pride in. Anyways, let's move on to the linebackers. We got a pair of Auburn off-ball linebackers, Dorian Mousey and Austin Keys. For Dorian Mousey, he was like a solid linebacker. Both these guys kind of end up looking like just a guys, and they don't have anything on their like profiles, whether it be like a testing number or anything like that, that makes them stand out so much that you go, man, we should probably spend a draft pick on them. That's why they kind of fall out here. But they're both in the beat Brian Asamoah sweepstakes with Kobe King. If you look at that room, right, with Cashman and Pace, Eric Wilson is, I wouldn't say a lock to make the roster. I mean, he could have a bad camp, right? And like Troy Reader himself out of this, but you're probably penciling him in until proven otherwise. And then you're probably penciling in the draft pick over either of these guys, or you're putting Brian Asamoah and you're making the draft pick earn his spot by beating Brian Asamoah out. And then these two guys are sort of there to play spoiler in that world. But Austin Keys is a little bit more of the athletic one. Dorian Mousey was the like more well-coached, kind of polished one. But he's only 229. So if he does have like trouble making it to the roster, there's a world where you say, well, why don't you slim down just ever so slightly and we'll work on your speed and we'll make you it will make you a safety. And honestly, the same thing could happen with Austin Keys, who ran a 4.63 40. Right? Like he's a little bit more of an athlete, but his main issue is reaction time. And unfortunately, this is the package deal that says if you leave a step late, it doesn't matter if you get there a step faster, right? Main issue is like IDing things and getting the play diagnosed in time where he can actually go make it, but he has enough of the recovery speed to make the play anyways. So if you can get those instincts up, if you can coach that up, maybe there's a package there worth uncovering. In terms of defensive backs, again, there's that corner from Kansas State that we'll talk about, Keenan Garber. So we'll have 5 players to talk about with Kevin in total. And then there's Zemiah Vaughn, cornerback out of Utah, height, weight, speed guy, turns like a freighter. That's the whole deal. Total disaster change of direction, disastrous agility testing. And because of that, basically anybody shifty that he ever played against could like put up numbers on him. So he gave up a ton of production in college. But hey, 5-year starter, height, weight, speed, there's a package that's maybe worth trying to uncover. Or maybe he just ends up being a warm body in camp. Sometimes a guy is just that, and that's that. Take your paycheck and go. And then there's Mishael Powell. Some people call him Mish, I guess. He's like listed as Mish in some places. He's a safety out of Miami, big time interception production guy. He's 4 interceptions last year which is like, second in the conference or whatever. Bad testing, but some like big time plays on the ball. You might remember he also played for Washington. There's this pick 6 against ASU. You might remember from 2023 when the year they went to the national championship. So he's like an interception production guy. And then just to review the guys we haven't talked about: Oscar Chapman, punter out of Auburn; Trey Stewart, a running back out of Jacksonville State; Alex Williams, a D tackle out of Middle Tennessee; Dante Fleming, a wide receiver out of Tulane; and Keenan Garber, a corner out of Kansas State. We will talk about all of those guys with my small school dude, Kevin Fielder, as well as a little bit more detail on some of the draftees. We got a lot to kind of go over with Donovan Jackson. One of the things I really want to examine is the differences between him and Blake Brandel, try to preview that camp battle a little bit and try to figure out what it'll come down to. And even maybe even previewing the Sam Howell, Brett Rippon QB2 battle. I think that will be a true battle. I would give the edge to Rippon just because he was in the building last year. But hey, anything can happen, and it probably comes down to some preseason. It will be an interesting preseason to watch those guys as well. And then since we have a minute, we can talk about the draft as a whole. And this is going to be a fairly low impact draft for the Vikings, especially early. And Kwesi even talked about that that the expectation for guys, what they do year one is not definitional to who they will ultimately be, which makes sense, right? How many times does a guy have a rotational year, role year one and then take that year 2 leap, right? Like that happens all the time. Or the guy in front of them leaves and then the year 2 guy gets to take over. Or even stories like Theo Jackson, right? Total non-factor at all for a couple of years. Now suddenly he's becoming more of like guys have these different developmental arcs, and in that building, they try to personalize the actual expectations they have for somebody, right? A super raw athletic prospect is going to have a different learning curve than someone who comes in really good right out the box, right? And you probably shouldn't one size fits all that, but the draft in a whole, as a whole. I'm not a draft grades guy. You're never going to hear me say like B+ or whatever until Sam forces me to on the football party. But for me, I'll tell you at least just like this. Like I love the Donovan Jackson pick. I like kind of everything they did in the trenches. I love Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins. I like the Kobe King pick. So call it, everything in the box that they did. I don't really love Gavin Bartholomew, although I didn't get to see quite a lot of him. So that's a very like soft and loose take. And I don't like the Ty Felton pick. I talked about that on a show after day 2. But I think the way, like the process by which Kwesi tried to kind of squeeze value out of this was really nice. I think that he got more than he ought to have gotten out of this one, which is good. Like they said, skillful. And, I like some picks. I don't like some picks. But I think ultimately when I came into this one, I said, unless they trade down that first round pick, if they stick and pick at 24, this draft class will be judged by that guy. And I think that's true, right? If Donovan Jackson is good, but like Ty Felton and Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins and Kobe King all flame out, you are not going to care because Donovan Jackson was good. You're going to be like, okay, at least that was a good draft. Like that will totally dictate the narrative on this. And similarly, if he's bad, it's going to take a lot from those other guys to overcome how bad it feels if he is bad. Like the lion's share of the value that the Vikings had in the draft was tied up in that first round pick. And I think back to last year when a lot of the praise for Kwesi was about finding a way to get JJ McCarthy, a then seen as blue chip defender, and keep the first round pick for next year, which we kind of thought was going to be like top 10 because we thought the Vikings would suck. And then they didn't. So it was a less valuable asset than we were thinking of it as at the time. And that's the danger of like thinking too far in the future. To be like, well, that's going to be a top 5 pick. Well, maybe it won't. But that maneuvering, coupled with the maneuvering of this year, that value starts to add up and turn into free money. And if Donovan Jackson turns out to be the difference between, the key to unlocking the full potential of a really good O-line, and suddenly JJ McCarthy has all the cleanest pockets in the world and he gets to put up 4,500 yards, you go back and you think about it and you say, if Kwesi hadn't maneuvered things the way that he did, would that be possible? But if Donovan Jackson fails, then all that sort of becomes a moot point. And as it always goes, it matters if you hit on the dudes. Everything else is just sort of eking out little edges on the margins. I will talk to you tomorrow. It is Town Hall Tuesday tomorrow, so get your questions in. There's a Google form in the show notes. Or you can confess a hot take to me. Looking forward to that. And as always, Skol.